Aloha. So for my Kupuna interview, I'm going to be interviewing my Popo, or my grandma, from my mom's side. And so the first question, what is your full name given at birth?
Henrietta Vieira de Luis.
And do you have, besides Popo, do you have any nicknames or other names that you go by?
Dolly. My dad called me Dolly from the time I was a little girl, and my friends call me Henry.
Do you know why he called you Dolly?
I don't know. I guess I think he said I was his Dolly because I was his first daughter, and so from the time I was little, I don't ever remember him calling me Henrietta. And I remember going to an office with him one time. He had to fill out some forms, and he turned to me. I went with him, and he turned to me and he said, "What is your name, Dolly?" So I remember that distinctly. So I knew it was always Dolly.
That's pretty cool. And when and where were you born?
I was born in Kupuna Hospital, 1945, July 14th, 1945.
And then you kind of talked about him, but what were the names of your parents?
My dad was Antone Vieira de Luis Jr., and Mama was Nancy Valdez de Luis.
And can you tell me a little bit about Nancy, Mama Nancy?
Oh my goodness, that she was the heart of our family. She was a very special lady, very, very nurturing, very loving. She was a wonderful mother. And we were so blessed to have her, in our lives. My mom was just the warmth and the love in our family. Something about her, I guess. Something about my mom.
Yeah.
And the thing is, my mother lost her mother when she was 15 years old with tuberculosis. Her mother died at a young age, and even before that, she was always in the hospital. She was in a TB ward at Kula Hospital. And so my mother she never really was home that much. My mother was not really close to her. And so my mother grew up without, love. And her father, had a large family. He was raising a large family, and he couldn't be the nurturing parent that my mom needed. And so she never got that love as a young girl. And so you kind of, you kind of wonder, how was she able to give that love to her own family when she never ever got it in her own life? But she did. She found somehow that well of goodness and just devotion and love for all of us. So my mom was special, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm. And then just same thing. Can you tell me a little bit about Papa?
Well, my dad grew up in Lahaina. He was born in Lahaina and grew up there. In fact, I forgot to mention that, didn't I? Oh, okay. Anyway, he grew up in Lahaina, and his mother, he had a lot of stepfathers, and he was the oldest in the family. I think they had 6 or 7 kids. So he had to quit school when he was in the 4th grade to go work in the fields. In those days, the kids didn't have to go to school. I mean, if you had a large family and you said, "Hey, I need my kid to go help bring some money in," they could pull the kid out of school. Of course, you can't do that today, but back then they could. So my dad only went to the 4th grade, and he had so many stepfathers in his lifetime. So my dad also had, he had a childhood that was not very loving and nurturing also.
Mm-hmm. And when you were talking about Mama Nancy, you said that her mom passed when she was 15?
Yeah, yes.
So you never got the chance to meet her?
Mm-mm.
Well, did you get a chance to meet her dad?
Oh, yes. My grandfather was, oh my God, Lauterio Valdez. And he lived on Oahu with my other aunt, my mother's sister, for most of his life. When they came, after he came, he came to Punane first, of course, worked on the plantation. And then later on, he moved, after he retired, moved to Honolulu. and we would see him once in a while. And then he came to live with my parents for a couple of years. So I got to know him. I guess the time he lived with my parents, your mom was a little baby. She was just born. And I can't remember for how long he stayed with us, but so I got to know him a little better. He was very jokey, always joked around, made your mom cry all the time because he kept teasing her, and but he was, my mom said that he was a tyrant when she was growing up. He was not as jovial and jokey. He was very strict, very strict. And I guess, when you have the responsibility of bringing in money, my grandma wasn't there, and he was the only breadwinner. And as my uncles got older, then they went to work also. But that, can you imagine the weight of my grandpa trying to, raise a family by himself? Must have been very difficult.
Yeah, can't even imagine. And did you were able to meet your dad's parents?
Yes, my grandma, my father's mother, she lived on Oahu. So when I was younger, I never really got to, we weren't there. We rarely went to Oahu. But also at some point when her husband died, she wanted to move back and live with her son, my dad. And so during those years, I got to know her on a more personal level. And she died here on Maui in Halimakua. She lived until I think she was 94, I'm not mistaken, around there. So she had a long life, and yeah.
And then were you able to ever meet any grandparents?
The only grandparents that I had again is my father's mother is Anita. My mother's father, Lotario. I never got to meet my grandmother. Of course, she died, many years before that. And my father's real father died when I was 6 months old. So I never got to meet him. No, he lived on Oahu.
Okay, and moving along. So, any great grandparents?
Yes. This is Grandma Woods, Anita Woods, parents. I met Mama Wela and Papa Welo, as we call them. They lived about 2 doors down from us in Pu'unene. Mama Wela was sick, so we really never got to see her that much. She'd be in a room all the time, in a bedroom. Papa Welo would be sitting in his rocker on the porch, in his rocker every day. And so when we go to the house, we would say Shon Papa, because he was our grandfather, but he was already old by that time too. And then my Papa Tony's parents, only his mother, and his father I didn't know.
Where does the Shon come from?
It's a short. I think I don't know if it's pidgin, but it's a shortcut, because Shon means bless me. Show mama is give me the blessing, mama. Give me the blessing, papa. Show mama, show papa. And we grew up always saying to my parents and to my grandparents, show mama, show papa. When we went to bed every night, we'd say show mama, show papa. Give us the blessing. That's a Puerto Rican custom. But I don't think Shon is really the correct way of saying it. I think it was like a shortcut or something. I don't know. I think there's more to it than that.
So it's like a pidgin of Puerto
so.
Rican?
I think so. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
And then moving along, you have siblings.
Yes.
And what are their names?
My brother was 2 years older than I was. His name was Dennis. And my sister is 5 years younger than I am, and her name is Natalie. And she lives in Oregon. Yeah.
And only Auntie Natalie still
Yes,
living.
yes. My brother sadly was murdered when he was 38 years old. This was in 1981. He was living in California at the time, and yeah, he was murdered. You never think something like that will touch your family. You think you see it in the movies, you think you see it on TV, but you never really experience. You don't think you're going to experience it, and you do. And it was horrible, especially for my parents. I mean, this is their child, you know. And they just never found the person who did it. I mean, he's been gone for many, many years now, 1981. So I'm not sure how many years that is, 40? Almost
Yeah.
40 maybe, I'm not sure. And yeah, so it was just my sister and I now. My sister is, as I said, younger than I am. She lives in Portland, Oregon. She's a retired registered nurse. And yeah, we just talk once in a while. You know, we get very seldom that will she come here. You know, we don't see each other that often.
Yeah, only special occasions.
Yeah, no, not even that. I mean, you know, when mom and papa got sick and they were going downhill, she came. You know, but other than that, you know, we haven't seen each other very often. Yeah.
So when you were growing up, what was your childhood like?
Well, there were a lot of memories. I mean, it was fun. You know, we grew up in a plantation, you know, and where now people, you know, they're familiar with neighborhoods. What neighborhood did you live in? Well, in those days, because we lived in a plantation, we lived in camps. So, and there were about, in Pu'unene was a large sugar plantation. And there were a lot of camps, maybe 7 or maybe 20, almost 20 camps. And I came from Spanish Bee camps. People would say, "Oh, where did you come? Where you come from?" "Oh, Spanish Bee camp." So this is how we all referred to what neighborhoods we came from. And you know, living in the plantation, you know, we weren't rich. We were poor. I wouldn't say we were dirt poor that we didn't have enough to eat. We had everything we needed, but we didn't have luxuries growing up like kids do today. You know, we had to go without a lot. We had to go without a lot, you know. So, and Papa was the only breadwinner. My mom never worked, but you know, then that's what I mean. My mother was there for us. I mean, we were, I think we got the golden goose or something with my mom because she took such good care of us. She made us breakfast in the morning before we went to school. If we were sick, she took care of us, you know. And oh yeah, so you know, we had friends and we would play games. We'd go to each other's homes. Occasionally, we would go to the theater on Saturdays and the matinees. And there were many times when we were playing and the kids would say, "Oh, this movie is playing today. Well, let's go see the movie." So everybody would run home to their parents and say, "Can we go to the matinee?" And my mother would open her little coin purse, and the movie was 20 cents. And a lot of times she didn't have nothing in the coin purse. She'd open the coin purse and there was nothing in there. "I'm so sorry, I don't have any money." So we couldn't go to the matinees. Now today, I think kids pay. How much do you pay to get to the theater?
It's like $20.
Yeah, I mean it's unbelievable. I mean, you could a whole classroom of students you probably could have taken to, you know, compared to how much each child pays today. But yeah, and then you know there were games. We had sports going on. We had swimming. We had the pool, and we had church. Of course, the church was very important. The Catholic Church in Pu'unene is still standing. The plantation used it. Once it was decommissioned and all the families moved out, the plantation wanted to get all the land back to plant sugarcane. So they made it possible for the families, little by little, to move out of the camps and go into Kahului, which is the increments. We went, you know, from the 9th increment, and I think they have up to the 12th increment, 14th increment, something like that. So eventually we moved out in 1965. We moved to Kahului from Pu'unene, and so they could plant the sugar cane. So unfortunately, you know, today I am a docent or a volunteer at the Sugar Museum, and the school kids come in and we teach them about the plantation, especially now that the plantation doesn't exist. You know, the kids, this is part of this history. This is part of the culture of Hawaii. The plantation is a big part of the culture of Hawaii. And like it or not,
Mm-hmm.
that's just the reality
Yeah.
of it. And this is why we have all these different nationalities and all these different um, customs, but everybody celebrates all the different customs and traditions and food and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. So that's what makes us so unique here in Hawaii, because every island had plantations, sugar plantations, and more than one sugar plantation
Mm-hmm.
on every island. Yes, so yeah.
And you kind of touched on it, but it's just more of a curious question. So you guys lived on the plantation, like property
Yeah,
in camps?
yeah, in the camps. They had homes. We were, I was lucky enough to grow up with an indoor toilet. We had
Mm-hmm.
indoor toilets like the regular toilets that everyone has. A lot of the camps did not have indoor toilets. They had the outside toilets that you had to use. But yeah, so we were lucky that we had my mama grew up in Punene. She
Mm-hmm.
was born in Lahaina, but she grew up in Punene, and she remembers having to go out to in latrine. It's not a latrine, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
a, the outside
Yeah.
outhouse. Yeah, the outhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So she remembers that,
Mm.
and yeah, but and our rent was very cheap. I mean, at that time though, in those days, you're talking about the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just looking at a piece of paper one time. I don't know how I got that receipt. And I was the rent. Papa was paying the rent for 1 month. I think was it? What was the rent? I don't know. Was it $10 or something like that? But again, that was a long time ago, and it could have been. It might as well have been $10,000 or something like that, because it was a lot of money in those days. The pay was very cheap.
Yeah.
They didn't make a whole lot. So, but and we had, and everybody was in the same boat. It's not like you're competing with your neighbor, or they have this, so I have to keep up with the Joneses, I have to get this. Everybody didn't have, they went without. And I remember the first family that owned the television in our camp,
Mm-hmm.
the Badaris family, and the daughter was a good close friend of mine. We played all the time. And I remember all the kids crowding on their porch and peeping through the window and watching the TV through the window outside the porch. And we were so excited to see this television for the first time, and so that was a good memory. I remember that. We were so excited. Yeah.
That's cool. And then, what schools did you attend?
I went to Punini from kindergarten until the first grade, 2 years. And then from the second grade on until my senior year, I went to St. Anthony's School in Wailuku. All of us did.
Well, not me.
Oh, I mean, well, all of my siblings
Yeah.
and I did.
And then my mom guys too.
Yes, yes. Your mom and Auntie, yeah, all of my children went to St. Anthony.
And then a lot of these questions you answered with about.
Well,
telling
some of the most
growing up.
vivid memories I remember when I was in kindergarten. What they did was, I was in kindergarten. So what they would do is, when they wanted you to take home on something to your parents, they would pin a note. I remember that very distinctly. They would pin a note to your clothes. And so one day they gave me this note and they pinned it to my clothes, and it says, "Make sure you give it to your parents when you go home." I was so scared. I didn't know what that note was about. What are they saying about me? Am I in trouble? I didn't know. And I'm walking home and I keep looking down at that note, and I was getting really nervous. So what I did was I took the note off and I threw it in the cane fields. And I have till today, I don't know what that note was about. I can't remember if the teacher ever got in touch with my parents and said, "Did you get the note from your daughter?" I don't remember. But I was so scared. I just kept looking at the note and kept looking at it. And finally, I just took it off and threw it.
So your teacher never said anything to you about
I don't
it?
remember. I have no memory of whatever happened and what that note was about. I don't know. Probably it was something innocent. I don't think I was a bad kindergartner.
Yeah.
But that's one of those childhood things that I don't know why I kept that this vivid in my mind. I don't know.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That kind of seems like something Tony would do.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And then after you moved on from school, what jobs did you take?
After I graduated from St. Anthony's, I wanted to be a nurse's aide, and people kept telling me, "Nurse's aide, Henrietta, you can do better than that. I mean, you can, the nurse's aide, like a couple of months training. You had a high school degree. You should at least go for an LPN." And then there were no LPN schools here on Maui. Used to be Maui Technical School.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's Maui Community College, right? That's part of the UH system. But in those days, I had to go to Oahu for the whole year, and I lived with my aunt in Kalihi Valley for that 1 year while I went to Kapiolani Technical School. Now it's Kapiolani Community College. But I got my LPN, and people were telling me, "Go get your RN, go get your RN." But I could only stay away for a year because at that time, I think the RN program was 4 years. If I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 years. Now it's a 2-year program. And Papa said, "No, you just go for that 1 year, and then you got to come back home." And in those days, even though I was out of high school, I listened to my father. It was just a different era.
Yeah.
So I came home after that 1 year, and then I went to work at Kula Hospital. At that time, it was called Kula San, the same Kula San that my mother's mother was in for tuberculosis. And I stayed there for about 7 years, I think. And then once I started having children, I was able to stay home. So I stayed home for a good 10 years, I believe, before I went back to work again after that.
Did you always want to be involved with medicine, like nurse?
Not really. I don't know why. You know what? In those days, today these kids are lucky. You guys have so many choices. In those days, for a girl, you went either into nursing, teaching, or business. That was it. Teaching, nursing, or business. I was not really good in business. Could barely pass typing, although I was very good in shorthand. Well, what good is shorthand if you cannot type very well? So no, business didn't interest me. And then I wasn't going to go to college. I mean, if Papa could afford, I would have liked to go to college, but Papa, I knew we wouldn't be able to go because Papa couldn't afford it. And so the other one was the nursing and business and a teacher. I was not interested in being a teacher, so I went into nursing. Yeah.
And then, how did you meet Gungung?
He lived in Kula. See, the thing is, when I started working at Kula Hospital, Kula San, now it's called Kula Hospital. In those days, it was Kula San, because it was a sanatorium. There were 4 floors that comprised of the building. 2 of them were for geriatric patients. One was a floor for mentally ill patients, and the 4th one was for TB patients. Because when I started at Kula San, there were still TB patients there. And then once the sulfose drugs came out, the sulfa is what cured tuberculosis. So once those drugs came out, there were no cases of TB. The cases dropped dramatically, so we never had patients coming in with tuberculosis. And so I kind of lost my train of thought. What was along the line of what?
How'd you meet Gungung?
Oh, yeah. So I worked at the hospital, and then Gungung lived in Kula, not far from the hospital, and we just met through mutual friends. So I went to someone's house one evening, and Gungung was there. He was friends with them, and that's how we met. Through just.
Did you go up to him, or did he come up to you?
It's hard to tell. I don't think we went out. We're just in the house. We're just everybody was just in the house. Yeah, he was quiet. Gungung is man of few words. He never say much. I don't ever say that much either, but yeah.
And then, well, you touched on this one too a little bit, but what are the names of your kids?
Okay, your mom is Alana, and then after Alana, 2 years later, Sheldon, and then 5 years after that, your Aunt Mallory was born.
And are you one of the few people that still calls her Alana instead of Alana?
Yes. Her name was Alana. And I guess this being Hawaii, when people see that name, they automatically just do the Alana because it flows, I think, more into the Hawaiian part of calling somebody that name. And so when she was little and she would go to school, she'd come home and say, Mommy. She said, the kids all calling me Alana. And I said, no, you have to correct them. I say, it's not Alana, it's Alana. And she said, I do, but they still call me Alana. And till today, a lot of the people still call her Alana, including your dad.
Yeah.
So
I think
I'm one of the few people that call her Alana.
I had to do a presentation, our senior presentation, and I'm pretty sure when I was talking about her, I said Alana.
See?
But that's
Yeah.
just like how I was
Yeah,
taught.
I know. By your dad.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so today, in your everyday life, what do you do for fun?
oh my gosh. I've always liked to volunteer. So, I think my Mama Nancy, was a very good influence, and good role model for me, because she could not volunteer as much as she wanted to, because Papa probably, he wanted her home. He was spoiled. My dad was spoiled, and he wanted Mama close by.
Yeah.
And they lived right close to Halimakua in Kahului, and she loved going to Halimakua with her ukulele and serenading the patients and singing to the patients and visiting the patients. And she probably would have gone every day. Papa allowed her to do that, but she didn't go as often as she really wanted to. Yeah. And sometimes when she didn't go for a while, she would finally go, and they would all tell her, "What happened to you? We missed you. How come you didn't come?" And she said, "I'm so sorry." And and then on the days that she went, on a regular, on a regular basis for that time being, they would be waiting in the wheelchair for her. Yeah, knowing that she was coming. So Mama was loved by everybody. She was sweet. She was just a sweetheart. She just loved everybody. And people know when you're authentic and you're real. The people know, and they react to that. That kindness and that love.
What are some important things?
The volunteer. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I
no,
know.
you're okay. You're okay.
Okay.
It's okay. This is your interview.
Yes. Well, you gotta kind of rein me in, because I get kind of lost
It's
on this
okay.
stuff.
You just talk.
Yeah. I do have a lot of volunteers. So because of Mama, I mean, she was part of the Sacred Heart Society. They had a society in the church, and they decorated the church. As she and a group of women decorated the church every week. But so I watched her. My mom didn't really preach to us, but watched how she lived her life, and we followed her example. And so, after I retired, I mean, I was already starting to do a little volunteer work even when I was working. But after I retired, I am busier now than I ever used to be when I work, because I am involved in a lot of different volunteer, you know, different in the community, in the church, and I enjoy it. Sometimes I don't have enough time for me, but I enjoy that.
That's cool. What are some important things in your life that you've witnessed or experienced?
What are some important things in my life that I've witnessed? Well, I guess one of the first things I have to say is the Man on the Moon. Watched that on TV. I was working at the hospital that day, at the General Hospital, and a patient had the TV on, and we all ran into that room, and we watched the moon landing on TV right then and there as it was happening, and that was very, very exciting for me to be as part of history, right? Well, I didn't witness a lot of or I did experience President Kennedy's assassination, and that was a very gloomy, very dark time for our country. He was a very popular president, and only 33 years old, I think, when he was shot. So that those kinds of things, and I think probably the biggest thing experienced, I don't know, not a very positive one, was when my brother was murdered. That was very difficult. It was a difficult time for our family. Yeah.
And so, I think you said earlier, how long ago was that?
The Kennedy's assassination?
No, with your brother.
Oh, in 1981. Yeah, he was only 38. Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. That's sad.
And so, who or what is your biggest influence?
My mom. My mom was always my biggest influence. My mom, as I said, she never preached, like, you should do this, you should do that. My mom never did any of that. I remember her never judged people, and she just went and lived her life and did the best she could. And she had sorrows in her life. She had things that happened, and she just kept on going. And my mom had a deep, deep faith. Her faith got her through a lot of tragedy in her life. And so I look at that and I said, wow, what a wonderful thing to witness, to see, the strength that she had and that she overcame a lot of that stuff. So yeah, for sure, my mother.
And last one, how do you want to be remembered?
Oh my goodness. I would like to be remembered like my mom is. I don't think I'm going to be remembered like my mom, because nobody can fill my mom's shoes. I would just like to be remembered for loving her family and for being there, and being there and caring. And I think we all want to be remembered for, contributing something to this world and being a part of the growth, and of the experience, and sharing the experiences with your family, and just I want to leave some nice memories with my family, of times that we've all shared together, and yeah, and to be remembered for being a decent mother and a decent grandmother and a decent great grandmother.
Yeah, you have.
Can't ask for any more than that.
Well, thank you for taking this time to do this interview.
You're welcome.
It was nice to learn a lot
Yeah,
about you, and thank you.
You're welcome.